Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, and here I am in Limerick, Ireland. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Limerick Soviet. That was way back in April 1919. So what is a Soviet, first of all? It's a Russian word for a council. And the October Revolution had taken place in 1917. The Bolsheviks had taken over Russia. Bolsheviks soon to change their name to communists. And of course it was widely reported here. People have long been aware of these things, of course, the Skiverine Eagle having had its eye on Russia for several years prior to that. But anyway, the First World War was just over, and a conflict had erupted in Ireland. In January 1919, some IRA men had shot dead two Royal Irish Constabulary officers at Soloheadbeg, County Tipperary, and that was the start of that conflict, the first troubles. Some people prefer to call it the War of Independence, or the Tan Fight. Anyway, oh my god, just what I don't need. I thought it was nice and early in the morning and I haven't bothered with my microphone thing. But anyway, this is the city of Limerick. It's an overwhelmingly Catholic city. The great majority of people are nationalist. Some people are Republican. They say they supported Sinn Féin, that political party, and the Irish Republican Army, which is like a clandestine force or paramilitary force rebelling against the United Kingdom because it's part of the UK at the time. The British Army was here, of course, because we were in the UK. Anyway, so there was a clash, and a prominent IRA man was killed in the city, and there have been attacks on the Crown forces. Very few people have been killed in the conflict yet. 1919, it was only just heating up. But anyway, the British Army instituted a pass system. People had to have a piece of paper, a pass, to grant the permission to go from this place to this place, and many people in the city took grave exception to it. So a Soviet was founded. So the trades unionists said they would not cooperate with the Crown authorities, and they were going to organize their own system of rationing things, and so they set up their Soviet and got certain shops to join in as well. So Soviet's meant to be a workers' council, where many of the workers take over factories and tram lines and banks and hotels and bakeries and whatever else, shops, and they run it, not the manager, not the owner, and they elect councils, and each major workplace will elect a representative to the city Soviet to try and govern the whole city. It's highly complicated. Does it work? Well, how can it? Anyway, it worked briefly in Russia, 1917 to about 1919. It was just too unwieldy. The Bolsheviks got rid of the system that they'd helped set up, because they said they didn't want freedom of expression and people voting on things all the time. Army units had Soviets in Russia briefly, but then they brought in iron discipline that was very much top down. But this only lasted 9 days here in Limerick, the Limerick Soviet, but it was a fascinating social experiment. There's a book about it. But this is the Mechanics Institute, as in it was a trades union headquarters, and it was proclaimed from here, and they sent fraternal greetings to proletarians all across the world, a time of workerism, when workers, not so much small farmers, but urban workers, whether factory workers or bus drivers or servants or waiters, mill workers, people like that, street sweepers, that they were the horny-handed sons of toil. They should take over the workplaces, and ordinary labourers should govern, and not the proprietors of these organisations. You see the red flag, as in of socialism. We all have red blood. We don't believe in blue blood. We reject the concept of aristocracy or royalty. That's why they have the red flag. Also, the red flag is a sign of emergency hoisted at a time of revolution by the authorities to say martial law. I know red for danger, also red, stop, it's dangerous. Not red light district, unfortunately, that's not what it means. But anyway, it collapsed very quickly. Now, some of the Limerick shopocracy was horrified by this. Some of the prominent business families did not like the idea of ordinary workers taking over workplaces, were worried about what was happening, and didn't want the Russian situation replicated here, quite rightly, because it descended into dystopia. So they came out against it. So it never really got going, and a lot of ordinary people didn't know what on earth the Soviet was. So some people, even if they were nationalist or actually Republican, even pro-IRA, were horrified by this, which is partly why it failed. But it was a scintillating little vignette about Irish history, what might have happened, how communism never gained traction in Ireland. This system that the Crown Forces instituted of passes. I think that was pretty soon done away with. Quite impractical. I'm not quite sure how it was going to improve security. All it was going to do was antagonise the populace, and most people were fairly hostile to the Crown Forces at the time. Remember, the First World War was only just over, and up until then it was quite a normal thing for someone from a Catholic background, like most of us, even of a nationalist outlook, to join the Crown Forces. Not if actually Republican. Nationalists believe that Ireland, or at least most of it, should be autonomous from Great Britain, not necessarily totally separate, but Home Rule. Was Republican, you want to sever every link to Great Britain, and you're an anti-monarchist and all the rest of it. So there's the People's Park over there with a fine obelisk, and opened by the Earl of Limerick. I remember as a schoolboy I was always looking at these boards up in houses, and it would list the old boys of each house. One of them was the Earl of Limerick, and the Earl of Limerick opened this, and I think reopened it about 10 years ago. Look at that Anglican church at the end of the street. I remember coming here in 1998, getting a ride across Ireland with a hitchhiking with a truck driver, and getting out Limerick, having a good look around it. I saw that church for the first time that I can recall, and I've never forgotten it. There's a little national school beside it. In the Republic of Ireland, a national school is a state primary school. Heading back to my hotel, Perry's, very reasonable, only €67. Couldn't quite believe it. Oh, look at this cross, a Celtic cross with the sun disk behind. No, it's not a pagan thing. Unfortunately, it's used as a white supremacist symbol in some places, the sun disk cross. But that's put up for the old IRA, as in the IRA fought up until 1921. After that's more controversial, the Irish Civil War 22 to 23, and all the other IRA campaigns against the United Kingdom, after the major portion of Ireland was outside the UK. So a fine art gallery here. The Limerick Soviet, I really must read that book about it. So it lingered on long in memory, but there are some Labour people here. There's some far left parties in the Republic of Ireland. Look at this cross here, erected to people who served the Crown Forces, Limerick men who served in the Royal Navy, the British Army, the Royal Air Force in the First World War and the Second World War, put up in 1929 when tempers had cooled a bit after the conflict, as in the so-called Anglo-Irish conflict, but then blown up in about 1957 by the IRA. Some Sean South got himself killed in Fermanagh, and then it was put up again in 1962. The IRA campaign had failed. They'd been interned by Eamon de Valera, of all people. So that's People's Park behind me. Love to do videos, but I've got to slightly hurry. Breakfast not being served in the hotel just yet. And the streets are so quiet and deserted, but isn't it lovely, Georgian Limerick? And only about 4 stories high. As a child I didn't notice it's actually quite a low-rise city, but I find that pleasing. It's very broad. Look at how wide the street is, and very spacious, but also human scale, so quite pleasant. So, you know, we could be in England, Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales. What's the difference, quite honestly? People got so het up on most trifling dissimilarities between them, and really strive to overemphasize these very minor distinctions. So Perry Street, from the prominent Perry family here, with a single R in Perry, staying in Perry's Hotel. So it's a little bit shabby now, Limerick. I mean, this is one of the finest streets, but the back streets and the lanes, and some of them are horrid. And it makes me think, what on earth was it like in my childhood? This being the city of Angela's Ashes, that renowned writer, Frank McCourt, who's born in New York, returned to his mother's native Limerick, grew up here, and went back to the United States again in 1919, so the age of 19, that was about 1948, and was in the US Army, was a teacher, but wrote a very well-regarded autobiography. So his memoir of Depression-era Limerick is exceptionally maudlin, the hardship that he had to tolerate. I can't remember what that clock is all about there. So a Catholic church here, facing the Protestant one further up the street. So many churches, you'd swear people got nothing else to do but to go to church in Limerick. Okay, and I can't remember what this is. Some order of priests or monks, is it? And there's Perry's Hotel, where I've been lodging. Okay, so I highly recommend it, actually. Okay, I'll switch it off now. Toodaloo.